a small company, Fit Fundraising, and we've got 4 employees and 4 contractors and 15 clients, and 6 of the 15 clients are homeless shelters. So we do a lot of work in just helping the underserved space. You know, my background, I was Chief Development Officer at Mercy Ships for about 7 years, and took giving from 23 million to 150 million in that 7-year period. We hired, when I got there was a development staff of 3, and I struck a deal with the board and the founder, Don Stevens. For every additional $1 million we raised, he let me hire 2 people, a frontline fundraiser and an inside marketing or donor services person. And so we grew giving pretty fast. When I left there, I had hired 28 frontline fundraisers, and 23 of them are still there. And so one of them is, some of you all may remember him, Randy Shaw from the Nashville Rescue Mission. But Randy's a dear friend, and they were going through some transition at the time, and he still lives in Nashville, but covers that region of the country for them. But it was really a fun time. Lynn and I have been to Africa many, many times. I think I've been in 13 different countries in Africa. You know, during that time period, we raised, you know, I spearheaded the capital campaign to raise $200 million for the largest hospital ship on the planet, serving the poor, and it's operational on the water today. You know, my background, I learned major gifts in the political world. I was a campaign fundraiser for the first 20 years of my career, and which was a crazy job. Of course, not much crazier than what I do now, but it required us to move a lot. Linda and I have been married. This is my wife, my business partner, and vice president of our company. She does recruiting and client services for our team, but we've been married 45 years, and I think in the first 20 years, how many times did we move, honey? You can tell the truth. 15 times.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, when you're working for a political candidate, you've got to be where they are. And so after the Bush '92 presidential campaign, it was kind of my last paying gig as a frontline fundraiser for politicians. I did serve a couple volunteer positions. I was Rick Santorum's finance director for his presidential campaign, and then I was also on the finance team at Ben Carson's presidential campaign. And so, so I still do some political work, but it's mostly volunteer work these days. We do some capital campaigns. We're just now launching a $200 million capital campaign for Mission Aviation Fellowship. And so I fly to Idaho to help launch that effort at the end of the month. But it has been a whirlwind tour for us. Long story, my mom was dying of cancer, and Melinda was living in Florida taking care of my mom. And I was going back and forth between Africa and Lindale, Texas, east of Dallas. And we did that for, you know, almost a year, and I finally said, I gotta live with my family again. And so we had just finished the capital campaign, so I resigned. We moved to Florida officially, and then after Mom passed, we said, what are we gonna do? I said, well, let's hang a shingle and see what God says. And so we, you know, we're blessed, and you know, do a few national accounts, a lot of regional accounts. Our average client is somebody that's behind, and revenue's flat or down, or they've been given a new growth goal by the board, something crazy that's just beyond their reach. And that's really what I specialize in, is growth. And you know, I call it blooming where you're planted. You know, starting with your current file, and then really reaching out and showing people kind of the industry best practices. I'm hoping I can sit down for most of it. I think we got the camera squared away. So, but that's what we do as a firm. You know, we help people. It really. I never thought I would be in the data business. I really am. Candidly, I never thought I'd be in the math business. I really am. Fortunately, I got somebody that can count here that works with me. But it really has been an amazing journey, and people are always shocked. You know, I have a couple clients that you know, have just a couple thousand donors. I have other clients, you know, that have 10, 15, $25,000, 25,000 named donor files. And so regardless of the size of your file, we can help you. I had one client in particular last year, and they're still working with us, a ministry called Grow Mongolia. And they came to us and they said, well, we've only got 200 donors. We raised $250,000 last year, and we've got a growth goal of $1.5 million over the next year. Can you help us? I said, I don't know. We'll see what your donor file tells us. So we do the analytics work, and again, we use AI, doing the wealth research work, help them with targeting, help them rank and score their top donors, from who can help them the most to the least. And that's the biggest mistake we make in fundraising, is asking a $10,000 donor for 25 bucks. And you know, we all pray, God, send us $1 million. God doesn't send bags of cash. He sends people. And you have to know the process to qualify and quantify, identify their passion, and then reach out and that's the next thing we do, is offer development. It takes big needs to get big gifts. And so we sit down and we look at your budget and we chunk it out like a donor thinks. Hey brother, how are you? Hey. I've learned a lot from these guys at the Timothy Group. They do amazing work. So
iron sharpening iron.
Amen, brother. But you know, it really is you know, a pretty special thing that we do, and it really is industry best practice. Today I'm going to kind of focus on, and I want it to be as conversational as possible. And you know, if you've got questions, interrupt me. I want to give you kind of a snapshot of where the industry is. It's a pretty scary place for a lot of people right now, because the ground is on the fundraising front is moving under our feet. But you know, my encouragement, coaching to people, is keep doing the industry best practice and keep cultivating these individual relationships. But let me jump into this. Again, I want to make this as conversational as possible. You know, a couple things, and I don't know if you guys use your phone to do these QR codes, but if you take a picture of that, there's a whole file of free stuff you can download, and you can go to the link and put in your name and email address, and we're going to send you a link to everything. And you'll see this slide a couple times. So it is, again, there's probably 30 or 40 documents in there, everything from what we're going to talk about, weekly activity reports, to samples of offer development grids. Here's what we're going to talk about today. You know, what's going on with the major gift sector. There's trends, there's things happening that you need to kind of plug into. There really is something amazing happening when it comes to major gifts, and it is in a lot of places it's going, people aren't even aware that it's happening, and they're kind of sticking to the old proven method of, okay, direct mail's been good to us, so we're just going to do direct mail. Okay, we got to add a little email to the mix. Okay, we're going to do some social media, but the bottom line is, all that serves a very important purpose. People forget, and I have to remind them often, the average major donor on your file, and I say the average, 90% of the major donors on your file. And I'm talking about people that give you $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000, $100,000 plus those big donors, you look on your file, their first gift is usually under $100. And they usually responded to a direct response effort. And so it's very important that you not give up your direct response program. Now, we'll talk a bit about how you have to retool pieces of that and start using segmentation, creating different versions, because how you talk to a major donor is very different than how you talk to a regular donor. Now, they all started out as a regular donor or a market level donor, gifts under $1,000, usually gift under $100. But what happens is, as their commitment level grows, it really happens once they reach the $1,000 threshold, and it really happens once they reach the $10,000 threshold. They stop being donors. They don't give money anyway. They don't give money away anymore. They're investors. And so the way you communicate with them has to change. The regular donors, they love all the color, they love all the photos, they love the 4-color process on the outer envelope. As much money as you can spend in communicating with them, videos, music produced, email, they love it. They give money away and they don't think twice about it. But your bigger donors, guess what? They see that 4-color process brochure that you mailed them and they say, they're wasting money on this stuff. The way they think about fundraising changes. And what's happening out there, and this is, I just got back from, it's been a crazy 10 days for me. I spoke on grant writing at the Association of Fundraising Professionals Icon Conference. There were 5,700 people there. And then I flew to Dallas and spoke at the Christian Leadership Alliance meeting on major gifts with a client of mine, Dr. Candace Gregory from the Open Door Mission in Omaha, Nebraska. And she's been a client for a long time, and I've worked with her over a decade on and off. That's the other thing about working with us. Sometimes we come in and it's a short-term training thing. Sometimes we come in and we're helping them with an audit and identifying their donors. And other times we come in and actually provide fundraising counsel for a period of time. But at the AFP Icon Conference, they announced while I was there, and there's been this ongoing research that they've been doing over the last decade. It's the Association of Fundraising Professionals Effectiveness Project. And it is a study that they're actually surveying nonprofit organizations to see the trends in giving. And it's pretty staggering what's happening. Market level donors, smaller donors, gifts under $1,000, have declined by 4%. A lot of people think smaller gifts have gone down more than that on their own files. Middle donor gifts, once they reach that $1,000 threshold, it's actually going up. And $5,000 gifts, it's up almost 25% over the previous year. This is the fact that stunned me. When they looked at overall files and asked questions about the overall file, the number of donors on the file, what they're seeing is 80% of all the revenue raised comes from 1% of the file. The old, you remember, and again, I'm really dating myself here. When I say old, it's not 45 years ago, honey, when we got married, but 5 years ago, I remember speaking at conferences like this, talking about the 20 that make the 80. 20% of your donors give 80% of your revenue. Now, that thing has shrunk. It is really important that you focus on major gifts because there's a trend happening. Again, there's lots of theories as to why this is happening. But the old donor pyramid, where we had this big base of smaller donors, and then you climb up to the top in a real tiny group. 20% of the pyramid, gave 80% of the revenue. It's falling apart. Some people compare it to a rectangle. Other people compare it to different shapes, but it's no longer a pyramid. And so you have to focus on major gifts sooner. It's really important, both inside your file and externally as you're acquiring donors outside of your file. People are going to come. Now, my theory, it's a demographics thing. You know, where are these smaller donors going? They're still out there. They're still giving at the same levels they were 10 years ago. But what's happening is the way they're giving is changing. First of all, they changed, as you know, Congress and changed the deductibility. You know, they for the most part, unless you know, they get to write off $12,000. I think it's up to 14 now, regardless of how much they actually donate. So they really have to be a big donor for their gift to even impact their tax situation. So that's one thing. The other thing is, and again, I'm dating myself here, a long time ago, 5 years ago, this same effectiveness study said, how the average donor on your file, how many different nonprofits did they give to? And the average donor gave to 7.2. The average donor now gives to 11.7. The average, a lot of your donors are giving to 20 different nonprofits now. And so they're giving the same amount of money, they're just spreading it out. And so it's a really, really challenging place we're in. And so you have to move people up this donor pyramid faster. A couple things happen when you focus on major donors. First of all, improved retention rates. Once you get somebody to that, and by the way, if you hit that QR code, I'll make sure I send this entire deck out to everybody here today. So we've got everybody's email address here. I'll get it out to everybody. So I just want you to know, feel free to take pictures, whatever you want, but I'm going to get the deck out to you as well. But if a donor, once they reach that $1,000 threshold, guess what? Their retention goes up past 70%. $10,000 threshold, retention rate goes up to 80%. Now, what I mean by retention rate is giving from 1 year to the next. When you acquire a new donor, again, the old days, I'm dating myself, 5 to 7 years ago, the retention rate we were shooting for with a new donor was 50 to 60%. What do you think the retention rate is for a new donor in America today is?
40, 35, 40.
That's an overall average. A new donor, it's close to 20% today. 80% are one and done. And it's because they're giving to a lot of different charities and they move around. It's a very different demographic. Again, you can, it depends how they're acquired. Digital donors are more likely to be 20% or less. Direct mail acquired donors are likely to be, in the first year, 20%. In the second year, it'll grow to that 45% average you just mentioned. So it's a blended result we're often looking at. But when you look at it by channel, it's a pretty interesting thing. The other thing that changes dramatically is long-term donor value. What most people see with rescue missions, and I've probably looked at 200 rescue missions, done donor file audits over the last 2 decades in one way or another. I've done more than 600 donor file audits for all nonprofits. I used to work at the Russ Reed Agency a long time ago, and most people don't know who Russ Reed is, but he's the guy that invented the meal offer. He's the guy that invented the syndicated or cooperative mail program. And I got to meet the man a time or two. For an average rescue mission, you're usually seeing a long-term donor value of between $300 and $500 a donor. Okay, and maybe it costs you $25 to $50 to acquire that new donor. So spending money in acquisition makes sense. You lose $50 up front to get the donor, but then you're going to make $500 over the next 5 years, long-term donor value, and so the math makes sense. When you acquire a major donor, the math makes even more sense, because the average $1,000 donors, their long-term donor value is going to be $4,000 to $7,000, and believe it or not, especially with events, You see it sometimes happen in direct response acquisition. When you acquire a 5-figure donor in the front door with the first gift, their long-term donor value is going to be over 100 grand. It's real money. And so focusing on major gifts and doing it sooner is really important. Here's this QR code again. If you didn't snap a picture of it, grab it. And again, we've got a major gift resource folder there for you. You can give us your name and address. You get the link automatically, and you can download. There's 40 or 50 resources in there. So with samples of what I'm talking about today. Couple things. Finding major donors. I mean, it really does take mission alignment. It is. It's not just their wealth. Again, if we could just do wealth research and find millionaires, we think that just because somebody has money does not mean they're going to give you money. They have to have philanthropic intent. And their giving to your ministry is the best way to demonstrate philanthropic intent. And so, you're overlaying wealth research, and we're doing this with and it's been going on for a long time. It gets better and better and better every year. But they're using, they're identifying basically what they do with wealth research, and there's lots of fancy ways to do it. Sometimes there's cooperative databases. Sometimes there is standalone databases. But what they're really doing, you provide an address, and they're matching assets registered at that address. And then it's a series of mathematical formulas where they determine, based upon the assets they see registered, what the household revenue is, what their tax liability is, and based upon the tax liability, they create, again, it's mathematical formulas, they create an estimated gift capacity. And in other words, how much does that person need to give away a year or pay more to Uncle Sam in taxes? And so again, it's math. Just because somebody has gift capacity of $100,000 does not mean that they're going to give you $100,000. It means they'd get a tax benefit if they gave $100,000 to charity based on the revenue received. But it's a good indicator of wealth. And you really want to use these tools. Again, whether you purchase them themselves or use an outside vendor to provide them, the tools are available. These wealth tools, and how many of you used them before? Most of you know what I'm talking about then, because they're available, and the technology is getting better and better every year. I mean, dramatically better. And so again, but it's just an indicator. There are companies. There's a company, believe it or not, called U.S. Monitor. Now they serve several purposes, but they're physical addresses that you can rent. It's not a P.O. box. They're physical addresses. And again, a lot of times companies on my side of the table will use those physical addresses as seed names for mailings and different things that we might be doing. Some clients use it for that purposes. Well-profile cash millionaires use those rented addresses to hide from big bald guys. Okay, and so again, the very people say, man, I know this guy's a millionaire. You should see his house. He's not showing up in the wealth research. Exactly. And so the uber wealthy, the super wealthy, they know how to fall off this radar screen. They know how to become invisible. Now in the old days, they used to do it to hide from the IRS. Now they do it to hide from me. So it's but they can do it. And again, it's usually people. I start to see it happening with people with net worth of 10 million plus, which would mean their gift capacity is $1 million a year. It's kind of how they calculate that. But use these tools. Just for conversation, what do you call a major donor in your ministry? How much money do they have to give a year? Somebody shout out one. 5,000. 5,000. Anybody else? That's a good number. I think that's a really good number. A lot of the ministries we work with call it a single gift of 1,000 or cumulatively of 2,500. I've seen that model. When I first went to Mercy Ships, they called a major donor $1,000. When I left, it was $10,000. And so middle donors were 1,000 to 99.99. So again, it's going to be a moving target as your organization matures. And and the reason it is because of the frontline fundraising you have to do. The average major donor in America, and I mean somebody this is their full-time job, how many of you do major gift work in addition to another job? How many of you are full-time fundraisers? A couple? Most people, if you're a full-time fundraiser, and again, there are exceptions to this, but what I've seen and what I've measured and what the industry tells you, the average major gift officer does 100 face-to-face visits a year. It's 2 a week. And again, it doesn't matter whether they're getting in planes, trains, and automobiles to go see them, they're managing a big region, or whether it's in their community. And it's primarily because of the pipeline you have to build and how you have to contact people and how you have to build relationships. And it takes time, and not everybody you call wants a meeting. But this thing that we do, major gift development, we really hope and pray that we can just send them a letter, send them an email, and a $10,000 gift shows up or a $100,000 gift shows up. It usually doesn't happen that way. These people are investors, and again, the people that take the money, these are people that the people that take the meeting. These are usually people that view themselves as investors, and they want to seek out the organizations they're investing in. They want to see the impact. It usually takes a major donor 3 to 5 gifts to your organization before they start getting into the range of their capacity. They always give less, and then they upgrade as you build a relationship. Finding these major donors is really important, and tracking them. Face-to-face engagement is the key. And if people ask me, isn't there an exception to that? There are, and again, don't get me wrong, it is harder to get face-to-face meetings after COVID than before COVID. People are still not engaging like they used to 5 or 6 years ago, but the bigger donors do. Again, it might be a tour, might be an event. I'm a big proponent of a neutral location coffee shop, especially with rescue missions for a first-time meeting. And let me tell you the rationale, and I've tested this and talked to donors about this. But we work in a pretty gritty ministry. And even though somebody knows you, loves you, supports you, they're a little apprehensive about coming down to the mission. And so I like to meet at a neutral location first and then bring them for a tour. The goal is always to get them to the mission. Once they see the mission, hands down, everything changes. Once they see your ministry, once they see all the things you're doing, everything changes. And so, but it's about getting meetings. Now, I'm a big proponent of a meeting with a purpose. Meeting with a purpose. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, for some people that I've been trying to get a meeting with, and they haven't returned my call, or they have but said, I'm really not interested, well, I'll do all kinds of things. I want them to see me. I want them to know I'm not a threat. I want them to know there's a purpose for why I'm trying to get together. I do drop-bys. Okay, now I don't do this every week, but I will have a gift or their receipt from their last donation, and I'll drop it by. Okay, now I don't do this every single time, but in that drop-by, I'm gonna give them the purpose of stewardship. And the purpose of our ministry. And I'll tell them, Mrs. Smith, listen, we can't meet with every donor. We have more than 10,000 donors on our file. We have more than 1,000 donors on our file. We have more than 20,000 donors on our file. We can't meet with everybody. But I want you to know you're one of our top donors. And once a year, the reason I'm pestering you, and I promise, only once a year, we want to sit down with you. We want to give you an impact report on what you gave last year. I want to find out what your passion is, what's on your heart, what's the Lord telling you, and then find out what you want to do next year. I'm not coming to twist your arm. I'm coming to talk to you about what God's laid on your heart. And once they understand it's ministry and not arm twisting, because trust me, If they're given to 7, 11 charities a year, and most of them are, there's people doing it wrong. And they're coming out there with pitch decks, and they're just twisting their arm asking for money. When I first got to Mercy Ships, I'm dating myself again here, but they had those old IBM Surfaces. It was before the iPad. And they had pitch decks on those surfaces. I was like, what are you doing now? So, well, we've got these things. Aren't these cool? There's videos and pictures, and then we, sign here, donate here. And it felt kind of like a used car salesman thing to me. And I said, well, you know what? We got a new strategy. So let me have those surfaces. And I picked them up. There were 3 or 4 of them sat on the desk. It's called pen and paper. We're going to talk to people. We're going to find out what their passion is. And then we're going to come back and put a project together for them. Now again, I know some people that don't like solicitation. What we do is solicitation, but it's about passion, and it's about their heart, and it's about what they want to do and what they've been led to do. And so it's creating projects, okay? And again, this is the hardest part. I can't tell you how many missions I get great buy-in from. They were willing to do weekly activity reports. They were willing to do the calls and outreach. They were willing to do everything they could to get in front of donors. But then it would fall apart when I said, listen, we need to take your budget and we need to chunk it out like a donor thinks. And we're going to identify projects. And we're going to have projects at the $100,000 level, $25,000 level, $10,000 level, $5,000 level. I usually don't like to go lower than 5. But I'll take 1,000. And once I have those projects, I never sit down with a donor and say, here's the whole menu. What do you want to fund? What's your passion? What's your heart? Usually God has them ready before you meet with them. But then once they do it, then, you know what? I know we've got a project on that. I want to talk to our program director. Why don't we come down and take a tour? I usually don't like to pull out the slick flyer, okay? But I want them to, it's identifying these, I call it offer development. And here are just some examples. Again, looking at your needs list. All of these things were in her operational budget. And she took her summer cost, her art therapy classes, her holiday campaign, and she put it into, what we call ask sheets or offer development. And so when you have a donor that expresses a need, having these kind of things available is really important. It starts out with, as a team, building out a grid, because it changes every year. It's based on your budget for that year. We want to fund your budget first. We don't want to create new cost centers. We want to fund your budget. These offers are really important, and making sure that you've got, how do we take this need and show, depending on the donor, 100, 50, 25, 10, 5. And how do we chunk it out that way? Because I sit down with the donor and I don't present all 4 levels. I'm going to only present one level where I think they're at. It's about individual donors. You guys, you'll hear me say this a lot. We all pray for $1 million. God only sends people. And it's up to us to find their passion, these offers, and find their capacity, how much they could give, and put the right project in front of them based upon on the right level. Again, you're going to have some donors, and again, I've met them. That you've met them. They view their whole reason for